The night the shadows came alive is etched in my memory, a chapter from my childhood that refuses to fade. It began with the familiar truce of bedtime, a signal I shared with my older brother, Luke. We were 10 and 12, respectively, caught in the sweet spot of childhood where bedtime felt like a prison sentence and the world beyond our bedroom window was a universe of unexplored wonders. Especially the wonders whispered about in hushed tones, like the allegedly haunted house down the block. As our parents exchanged goodnight wishes, promising to keep the household safe and sound, a different kind of promise sparked in my own room. I slipped out, meeting Luke in the dim hallway, our eyes meeting with a shared, mischievous understanding. We padded softly to his room, the first floor being a slight advantage in our quest for adventure. There, we gathered our tools for the night's escapade, 2 hand-powered flashlights, relics of a simpler time, their mechanisms loud and clunky but reliable in their own way. With a conspiratorial glance, Luke opened his window, the cool September air rushing in, carrying the scent of late summer and the promise of a forbidden journey. We hopped out, the ground yielding soft beneath our feet, and made our way down the block, the flashlights casting jittery beams of light into the darkness as we cranked them with intermittent clicks and whirs. It took only 2 minutes to reach our destination, a dilapidated house that seemed straight out of a horror film. Its antique design spoke of a bygone era, now marred by broken windows and rotting wood. The isolation, set apart from the neat lines of the neighboring houses, added to its eerie allure. It was the kind of place neighborhood kids and teens whispered about, the kind that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Driven by a curious and confident spirit that was entirely Luke's, we circled to the backyard. The door was predictably locked, a fact that sent a jolt of relief through me, almost wishing we could turn back. But Luke, ever the fearless leader, picked up a weathered plank of wood lying amongst the weeds and began smashing the already chipped window. The sound was deafening in the quiet night, the glass shattering with a crystalline crack. Once enough of an opening was created, we fumbled inside, sliding the window up fully. The air inside was stifling, a suffocating heat that felt unnatural for a September night in the mid-70s. We were the first to enter the house, or at least from the back, it seemed. There was no graffiti, no signs of recent looting, only a sparse collection of furniture that seemed too worn to be worth stealing. We ventured further, climbing the stairs to the main floor, the hand-powered flashlights creating a dance of shadows in the oppressive heat. Then, the silence was shattered by the slightest crackle in the floorboards, right above us. Both of us froze, then jumped. I tugged at Luke's arm, my voice barely a whisper, urging us to leave. But he just shook his head, his voice confident and reassuring. "The place is old as hell," he said. "It's just house noises." I stopped cranking my flashlight, the sudden silence amplified the fear that was creeping up my spine. I pleaded with Luke to do the same, but he just called me stupid for even suggesting such a ridiculous idea. Then, another crack echoed through the house, closer this time. Without a word, Luke began to walk upstairs, his flashlight beam cutting a path through the darkness. I didn't want to go up there, the thought of being so close to whatever was making those noises terrified me. But the thought of staying alone in the downstairs, in the suffocating heat, was even worse. So, I followed him, my own flashlight clutched tightly in my hand, its beam trembling with each step. Upstairs, a door stood slightly ajar, leading to a room right above where we had been standing moments before. I begged Luke not to open it, but he just grinned, a reflexive gesture of the older brother showing off his bravery. He reached for the doorknob, the hand-powered flashlight still cranked with a steady rhythm. Then, he stopped. I was confused, watching his beam of light flicker and die as he stopped cranking. He moved closer to the door, his ear pressed against the wood, listening intently. A wave of silence washed over us, broken only by the frantic beating of my own heart. And then, it happened. The most deafening, nightmare-inducing moment of my life. A single, sharp bang echoed from the other side of the door, sending Luke staggering back into the wall, his hand flying to his ear in pain and shock. We dropped our flashlights and bolted straight out the back door, sprinting home in the darkness, our hearts pounding in unison. We were so loud when we finally reached our house that our parents came out to see what was wrong. We tried to explain, our voices trembling, but they were too tired and too skeptical to care. They grounded us for a week, and we were left to our own devices, haunted by the memory of that bang and the darkness that enveloped us. 2 nights later, just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a strange sound outside my window. A faint glow seeped through the slightly opened blind, and the sound of cranking, the familiar rhythm of my own flashlight, echoed in the distance. But when I looked out, there was nothing but complete blackness. I lay there, my heart sinking, wondering if it had all been a dream. The next morning, I barely remembered the events of the previous night. But as the days went by, the memory of that haunted house and the chilling bang from the upstairs room remained, a ghostly reminder of the night my childhood innocence was shattered. And to this day, I still hope that part was just a dream. My first year of university was a whirlwind of new experiences, new people, and new fears. I found myself among a small group of friends, navigating the labyrinthine halls of an old and notorious university, known for its ghostly figures and paranormal activity. The campus janitors and security guards were all too familiar with the strange occurrences that seemed to plague the oldest section of the campus, specifically the Art and Design Faculty building. It was late afternoon, just before 5 o'clock, and my friend needed to use the restroom. She asked me to accompany her, and I readily agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to rest my eyes from the strain of the projector in our class. We walked to the faculty building, a structure that seemed to breathe with the weight of its history. As we approached the restroom, a chill ran down my spine. It was one of those old, stone buildings that seemed to scream ghost stories. The air was heavy, and the sound of our footsteps echoed ominously in the hallway. We stepped inside, the faint scent of old stone and disinfectant filling the air. My friend rushed into one of the stalls, and I waited outside, leaning against the cool wall. After a few minutes, I realized that my friend was taking longer than expected. I decided to walk back to class, assuming she would meet me there later. As soon as I stepped out of the restroom, I heard her calling my name, her voice filled with panic. According to her, as soon as she entered the restroom, she heard the sink's tap turn on. Thinking it was me playing a prank, she waited for a response. But when she opened the door, she saw no one else inside besides herself. Yet, the other stall was locked from the inside. Curious, she asked if it was me. There was no answer. She looked down the gap between the stall and the floor but saw no shoes or legs. Instead, she heard faint feminine whispers and humming from that particular stall. Terrified, she left without another word. Class ended, and we walked back to our dorms, the events of the afternoon playing over and over in my mind. Later that evening, we stumbled upon one of the campus janitors, who was more than willing to share the local lore. He told us about the ghost of a woman who was said to reside in the old restroom, appearing only after 5 o'clock in the evening. Needless to say, my friends and I made a pact to never use the bathrooms in that section of the campus after the designated time. The thought of encountering the ghostly figure who seemed to haunt those old stone walls was too terrifying to contemplate. Whether these claims are true or not, I cannot say. But the events I have described are true, as far as I can remember. The mystery of the haunted house and the restless spirit of the university campus remain etched in my memory, a constant reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. This is a story that happened to me, a story that I will never forget. A few months ago, while serving as a missionary in Japan, I had an experience that would stay with me long after I returned home. I had been in the country for 2 years, and my time to return home was approaching. I was in my last area, Kyoto, a bustling tourist attraction and an ancient Japanese city that I had always dreamed of visiting. It was late at night, and my companion and I were out, knocking on doors in an attempt to spread the message of Christ. We came across an apartment building that seemed promising, and decided to give it a shot. In Japan, apartment buildings can range from super luxurious suites to decent apartments with 4 to 5 rooms total, or even ghetto-like conditions. This apartment was clearly the latter. We were on the second floor of the building when we knocked on a door. A middle-aged man in worn-out clothes answered, his face twisted into an awkward smile. Being the kind missionaries we were, we introduced ourselves and asked if he would like to learn about our beliefs. Instead of giving us a direct answer, he invited us in. Usually, in missionary work, this is a good sign. But upon stepping foot into that apartment, I knew we had made a mistake. The place reeked of the smell of marijuana and urine. The apartment was tiny, with a small entryway, a door on the left leading into a bathroom, a small kitchen to the right, and a small multipurpose room with a small kneeling table, TV, and bed. That was it. Judging by the way he was behaving and the decor in his apartment, I knew this guy definitely had some sins worth confessing. He sat us down at the table and started ranting about how he hated Christians and wanted to kill them. My companion and I tensed up, but the man was clearly plastered, having drunk like 10 times his weight in booze. He continued to rant, his voice slurring and his eyes glazed over. Then, he said, "I'm going to tell you a secret, and you can't tell anyone." He then pulled out from under his bed a box, which he opened to reveal thousands and thousands of dollars worth of Japanese yen. Yes, it was authentic. We even examined it, our hearts pounding in our chests. This man was an illegal drug lord who worked with the Yakuza, the Japanese mafia group. We then realized that if this man knew what he just did and showed us, he would kill us for sure. Or at least take us hostage. My companion and I were terrified. We tried to come up with an excuse to get away, but the man wouldn't let us go. He kept ranting on about irrelevant things and saying how Christianity was an evil cult of some kind. We tried to explain our side of the story, but there's no use in reasoning with a drunk drug lord who works for the Japanese mafia. It then got to the point where we practically had to run for the door. We said we were leaving, stood up, and quickly walked over to the door. The guy then stood up and began to reach for something in a box. But we never saw what it was. As soon as the door closed, we bolted home faster than we ever had. The last thing we wanted was for him to sober up and realize he had revealed his deepest, darkest secrets to 2 Christian missionaries from America. Had this man not been drunk, he probably would have killed us. All we know is that he was reaching for something, maybe a gun, as we were leaving. That night, I learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of the world. But I also learned that no matter how scary things may seem, there is always hope. And that hope is what keeps us going, even in the darkest of times. When I was 15 years old, I had an experience that would change the way I looked at the world forever. One night, for whatever reason, I was home alone. My bedroom was on the first floor, right next to the living room, which was a strange setup, but it was what it was. I had the door shut and was playing video games when I heard a strange sound come out from in the living room. It took me a few moments to figure out that it was a tap on the window. I stepped through the dark living room and out the front door, and checked the bushes by the window. Nobody was there. I went back to my room, with the door open, and resumed playing the game. 5 seconds later, another knock on the glass. This time, I ran to the front door, barefoot and ready to chase the pranksters, but again, no one was in the bushes, no one was even in sight. I chose to just ignore it from here on out. On my way back to my room, there was another knock. I ran over to the window to try and catch them. There wasn't anyone outside, but I felt something right above the tip of my toes. I looked down and saw the dark shadow of a figure sitting down by the window. I think I was back in my room in a matter of 2 seconds, with the door locked. I was hiding under my bed, trying to call my dad, when the knocking on the glass continued from outside. I explained to my dad what was happening, and he called me crazy for not calling the police. So, he told me he would for me and to wait in my room with the door locked. I'd say about 5 minutes later, the knocking stopped. And 10 minutes later, the cops arrived. The figure was gone, but there were no signs of entry or exit, as all the doors were locked and all the windows shut. Still, we haven't seen or heard of anything since then, but it's still creepy as hell to think about. The memory of that night, the fear, the uncertainty, it all lingers, a constant reminder of the thin line that separates our world from the unknown. And sometimes, the unknown is the scariest of all.